Who holds power in the age of artificial intelligence? We're often told that AI is here to empower us. At present, I would argue that that's not the case. That power, in fact, resides with those with the resources and capabilities to create and sell AI. If we, as people who are using and being affected by artificial intelligence, want to regain that power, I propose we must do two things. We must learn how to regulate AI, and we must learn how to use AI ethically. And let me explain why. In 2019, Nazli Shukri and David D. Clark, both from MIT, defined the term called co-evolution dilemma. And the co-evolution dilemma talks about a gap that exists between what we call the world of technology, the world of online, the world of digital, and between the world of international relations. There are laws, standards, policies, and regulations. And this gap exists because technology moves much faster than our ability to create the right policies or the right regulations. And this gap, this void, is filled by large organizations that are able to innovate freely without boundaries or without rules. And when it comes to AI, this gap is much more noticeable. But I want to start there. I want to start with AI. And when we look across the last year or two, 2023, 2024, we must acknowledge that it's the large language models that have completely taken the stage. Large language models, or LLMs, are the type of AI that powers, that fuels most of the chatbots that we interact with. And the thing to really understand about large language models is that they're not intelligent in the way we think. They are mathematical models. They're extremely well engineered. They can, with precision, predict the next word in a sentence. But they lack empathy, and they lack context, unless we give it to them. Consider for a moment how these models are created. When it comes to large language models, they are created using information in the public arena. Put very simply, the models only know what we teach them. Think about our society historically. Historically, we have been good and kind and empathetic and supportive and helpful. But also, as people, we can be racist and sexist and aggressive and unkind and violent. And everything that's good about us is in history, and everything that's bad about us in history is now present in those models that we use on a daily basis. And you could even go a step further. What is good versus bad? In 2023, in a study by Rochewall and Lewis, authors looked at the levels of diversity that exist in a growing body of AI policies, finding strong underrepresentation of anything that's not of what we call global north, or that's not Euro-American. So how do we fix this? I said at the start of this talk, there are two steps to empowerment of us as people. And the first is regulation. This year, 2024, the AI Act was approved. The AI Act represents the world's first regulation of artificial intelligence, and it impacts everybody within the EU who's creating, using, or distributing AI. And a really fascinating thing about this regulation is that it doesn't treat every AI the same. It is risk-based. It finds those uses of AI that are more risky or can create more harm, and it asks more from them. Higher transparency, better quality data, better view into how that model makes decisions. It works like a pyramid. The base of the pyramid is what we call minimal risk systems. This could be a music recommendation engine on your phone. If it fails, the worst thing that happens is that you listen to some bad music. Above that in the pyramid is what we call limited risk. And limited risk, the AI Act says, let's make sure that the end users are aware they're speaking with an AI. And a good example here would be a customer support chatbot. No significant harm is done there. If it fails, it maybe mismanages your refund or a shopping query. Above that is the tricky category. We call this high risk. And with high risk, this is where the AI Act is most strict. It asks for good quality data, it asks for great transparency and auditability, and this could be an AI system that maybe decides whether you get a mortgage, or an AI system that decides whether you get hired or not. And the tip of the pyramid is what we call unacceptable risk. Items completely prohibited in the European Union, subliminal manipulation of people, or social scoring. But I want to apply this to practice with you today. I want to choose an example that's easy to imagine, and think of self-driving cars or autonomous vehicles, AVs in short. When we thought about introducing self-driving cars as people, we thought of introducing them in gradual steps. The first, we call this assistive AI. That means that you are sitting in the driver's seat, you're holding onto a steering wheel, but the car maybe makes slight adjustments. Maybe keeps you in a lane, maybe helps you speed up or slow down, but you're in control as a person. Step 2 is what we call collaborative AI. And with collaborative AI, you can let go of the steering wheel. Now the car takes turns, but you still are there just in case. And 3 is fully autonomous. That means you can safely sit in the back seat and the car functions on its own. Now, autonomous vehicles are already a heavily regulated industry. There are countless requirements from the European Union going towards what those will look like in the future. But still, the AI Act may introduce some new requirements. Take specific example, AI-powered emergency brakes in cars. Undoubtedly, AI brakes will help us. It will decrease the number of accidents. We people are slower than AI. It can help us all. And the regulation isn't stopping this. It's not blocking progress. It's merely saying if we have a system that's such a high-risk system, as AI emergency brakes can be, let's just make sure it's safe. Let's make sure we understand what data it's used to train its model. Let's understand how it makes decisions. Let's make sure if all else fails, there's a human to intervene should they stop working. Now at the start, I said there are 2 steps to empowerment. Regulation empowers us to a degree. It limits the risk. It makes the brakes safe. But I want to talk about the step 2, using AI ethically. There's a study from this year, from February 2024, by Takemoto, who looked at how might different large language models we commonly use react in ethically charged situations. They presented the models with a scenario in which an autonomous vehicle is approaching a crosswalk and a pedestrian steps onto that crosswalk. They wanted to see what the models would do. They hit a pedestrian or swerve off the road and jeopardize the health of the driver and the passengers. Would they turn right and hit a human or turn left and hit a dog? Or the classic philosophy problem with the train tracks and 5 people tied to it, would the model pull the lever to divert the train onto another track? And the results of this study are broadly as we would expect. Saving a dog is less important than saving a person. Saving 5 people is much more important than saving 1. Saving the pedestrian is more important than saving people in the car. But the trouble here is with the consistency. The models would consistently choose the same outcomes, almost strictly, almost rigidly. We call this rule-based ethics. But we as people, we're not guided by rules. Where are emotional connections? Where are connections to religion and culture and values? What if I don't want the car to make that decision for me? What if I, as a person in that car, want to save myself? What if I have children in the car? Now, for the purposes of today, we distilled an incredibly complex industry of AVs into two super simple arguments, and that's by choice. Of course, creators of such cars are thinking way ahead. They're risk-averse, I'm sure, and they are thinking of these ethical dilemmas for us. But the example that we simplified for the purposes of this talk is to understand deeper implications of AI, and that is, law and ethics are not the same thing. Law is here to keep us safe, to limit the risk, to make sure that those brakes function as they should be in the car. Ethics, on the other hand, is not about limiting the bad, it's about doing good proactively. I'm personally incredibly excited by AI. To be able to have this kind of discourse and look at what next years or decades will look like when it comes to humans interacting with AI and the machine is really fascinating to me. And my personal recommendation to you today is have a look at how some of the European countries are already addressing this subject and thinking of the balance between regulation and ethics. My personal favorite is Sweden. Sweden launched and published an national AI strategy earlier this year, 2024. And within that strategy, at the center, they put societal benefits, responsible approach, ethical values. That's the core principle of that. And you'll see much more when it comes to other countries. And we're also working on that, of course, in Czechia. I asked you at the start, who holds power in the age of AI? And my answer to you today is that can be us. That can be people. But it starts with education, such as the one we're having here today. Education leads to momentum. Momentum can create pressure on policymakers, and policymakers can make sure they put the right guardrails in place. Thank you.